As some of you may or may not know, the first Thor movie that came out during Marvel's Phase 1 of movies is one of my favourite Marvel Cinematic Universe movies so far, and for that reason I was really excited to see Thor: The Dark World. Now, this film picks up following the events of the Avengers, where Thor has taken his brother Loki back to Asgard to face his punishment at the hands of Odin, their father, for his actions during the Avengers when he tried to enslave humanity. So needless to say, Odin isn't best pleased and puts Loki in a dungeon. Now, that's not a spoiler because that's in the trailer. Meanwhile, there is a race of dark elves who were defeated by Odin's father years prior, who are coming back for revenge and want to turn the 9 realms, so everything that exists, into darkness, hence the title, The Dark World. The Dark Elves are led by a character called Malekith, played by Christopher Eccleston, who most people will know as the first rebooted Doctor Who of the 21st century. He plays, as I said, Malekith, who is the main antagonist in this film. Now, going in, I'd read nothing but sort of positive reviews of this movie, and I have to say I did really enjoy it, with a few minor gripes. So first of all, I want to really talk about what the film does well and what I like about it. Now, this film is a couple of hours long. I felt like I was in the theatre for about 30 minutes. It's a very well-paced, quick-moving movie. Didn't drag at any point for me. I enjoyed every moment, and the time just flew by, so I think that is the sign of a well-paced film. All the actors who are in this are reprising their roles from either the first Thor movie or the Avengers. They all have great chemistry, and that helps the fact that the script has some great dialogue in there and great character moments, so the chemistry and the dynamic between all the different characters is already established, and the actors clearly relish working with each other and being these characters, so that I really liked. The film itself is actually pretty funny. It had the audience, myself included, laughing, when you're supposed to, but there are a few good belly laughs in this movie, and that's very sort of telling, in as much as I was a bit worried with a title like The Dark World and seeing the trailer that this film might take itself a little bit too seriously. The first Thor movie, directed by Kenneth Branagh, was very funny as well. It had a very sort of comedic undertone, and they've kept that. If anything, they've accentuated it in this movie, so the movie is very funny. It's directed by Alan Taylor, who has only really done TV work so far. He's directed Game of Thrones and The Sopranos, other sort of HBO TV shows like that. This film, you would not think it was somebody's first film. It looks absolutely amazing. You would be so proud if your first movie looked like this. It looks astounding. The effects are great. Every cent is on screen, so to speak. So that was really good as well. The action is very well paced. They try to make every action scene interesting, be it either visually or narratively. So every action scene sort of has a different spin on it, and that is most evident in the sort of climactic battle scene between Thor and Malekith. There is a certain plot device put in there that makes the scene a bit different. And I have to say, and this is something that my partner Laura and I were talking about when we left the cinema, is that this out-Superman's Superman. This blows Man of Steel out of the water in every way. The action, you can tell what's happening, you're actually invested in the characters, you care, so that was a plus point. And the fact that when the film starts, Thor is a different character to that he was in either the first Thor or the Avengers movies, because he's grown since then. He's a much more mature character, so his arc is different in this movie, because all too often with sequels you find the character going through the same arc again, but they have the good sense to sort of stick to their convictions, and Thor is very much a different character at the beginning of this movie than he was in the others, so that was refreshing. There are a lot of plus points. The best things in this are probably Stellan Skarsgård and Tom Hiddleston as Loki. They're the standouts, but you also have everybody's great. You have a cool cameo from like Chris O'Dowd from the IT Crowd and stuff like that. There isn't a weak link in the bunch. It has a cameo from one of the Avengers, but not in a way that you would assume. I won't spoil who it is. You also have two post-credit scenes, so make sure you stay until the very end of the credits. And they sort of, one of which rounds off this story and another teases one of the future Marvel films, which was pretty cool. And there are a lot of plus points, but and this is pretty big, but there are some points to this film that I don't like too much. The first of which is the villain Malekith, played by Christopher Eccleston, is very weak. His motivation, his character is very thinly drawn. There's not a lot there. Christopher Eccleston isn't given a lot to do. He's not given an awful lot of screen time. His motivations remain murky, and essentially this turns into, in the third act, the obligatory runaway from a comic book death cloud, which we saw at the end of The Amazing Spider-Man, Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer, the Green Lantern, Man of Steel. I don't know what it is about comic book movies that like to have a big death cloud at the end, but that's a gripe. But other than that, the actual climactic fight scene between Malekith and Thor is really good. It takes place in London, in Greenwich actually, which is where I stayed literally just a few weeks ago. I actually went to the exact spot that this was filmed, so it was quite a novelty to see, you know, on screen. We were stood there, and, you know, they've obviously like rebuilt it since Thor and Malekith wrecked it, but that was quite a novelty. And they don't fall into the trap of having citywide destruction. That, you know, the Avengers is guilty of that, but, you know, Man of Steel looking in your direction. So that was good. The last action scene is actually really well done. It's just the death cloud that's a caveat for that, for me. The main criticism I have of this movie is its treatment of female characters, because the female characters in this are rendered to nothing more than either a plot device, a MacGuffin, or a damsel in distress. Natalie Portman's character of Jane Foster is very passive, doesn't really take much action in what happens to her, which I wasn't too keen on. The only female character who really shows any initiative is Frigga, played by Rene Russo, who we get to see a little bit more of than we did in the first Thor movie, which I really like because I like Rene Russo. But then what they end up doing with her character is just, there's no sort of reason behind it, and if I won't tell you what happens because I'm avoiding spoilers, but you know, you'll get the excuse of, oh, it's to motivate the main character, but to me, female characters shouldn't be there to just motivate the male characters. They should be characters in their own right and not just a plot device. So that was a major caveat for me, and that and the thinly drawn out villain. Those prevent this from being a great film, but I did really enjoy it. You know, don't get me wrong, the good far outweighs the bad, the bad bits just stop it from being, you know, really great. So I don't think this is as good, or at least I didn't enjoy this as much as I enjoyed Iron Man 3. But having said that, the two, you can compare the two quite well, because this is very much a self-contained story. It's not bogged down in like S.H.I.E.L.D. or MCU continuity. The majority of this movie takes place off-world, either in Asgard or one of the other realms, and they no doubt do that so that they don't need to explain why S.H.I.E.L.D. isn't involved. Portions of it do take place on Earth, and, you know, if anything, those portions are probably the strongest in the movie, but there's not an awful lot of them. The majority is off-world in the cosmos and stuff, so it's a different movie to what we've seen before in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's definitely proof that Phase 2 so far is a stronger set of films than Phase 1. I do think that this film is probably better than The Incredible Hulk, Iron Man 2, Captain America, although I can't say that I think it's as good as The Avengers and Iron Man 3. I'd probably put it on a par with the first Thor movie, which I really enjoyed, but for very different reasons. It's a very different movie, but it is entertaining. You don't have to have seen all the others to enjoy this, and that's another plus point. It's a very entertaining film, it's very well paced, it's got characters that we've grown to love, and it knows how to treat those characters with respect, albeit the female characters tend to take a back seat, which I thought was a shame, especially reading Natalie Portman's recent comments about, you know, Marvel's in need of a strong female lead, which I would agree with. I just think what they did with her character and with like Rene Russo and whatnot was a bit... you know, not overly keen, but she plays it really well. She delivers the sort of zippy dialogue really well, and you know, so from that perspective, she's a very likeable presence. But it's what they do with the character that I didn't like so much. Overall, the film's very entertaining. I really enjoyed it. It's definitely worth your time. Like I said, I don't quite like it as much as I like Iron Man 3. It's a very sort of densely packed film. There's a lot going on, so it's no doubt one that will reward repeat viewings. So it's one that I'll be picking up on Blu-ray when it's out. So like I say, Thor: The Dark World, really enjoyed it. I'm sure you'll enjoy it if you're already a fan of these movies, or if you like fantasy movies. There's something here for you. I do think some of its plot devices are a little bit outdated. So yeah, Thor: The Dark World, I would highly recommend.